Okay, welcome to the 12th GoTug webinar. This is the Geospatial Online Transportation Users Group. Today, our webinar is January 9th, and it's scheduled to run from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And just to let everybody know, this is being recorded, as is our standard practice, and will be available online just a little bit after the webinar is concluded. Just a basic overview today for the agenda. We're going to do a quick welcome and overview. We have two technical presentations today. The first will be by Mark Sarmiento. It's an overview of state DOT's efforts in using GIS capability maturity models to assess their organization. That will be followed by a Q&A. The second technical presentation that we have will be by Brett Jewell and Phil Smith from Oregon DOT. They'll be talking specifically about their DOT's experience with capability maturity models, and that will also be followed by a Q&A.
Sorry.
Nope, you're good. All right. And then just to give everybody a brief kind of history and overview of GoTug, if it's your first time joining us for one of these webinars. Here's some key folks and contact information. I'm Caitlin Marousas. I'm with Utah DOT. Jeremy is co-chair. He's with North Carolina DOT. And Penelope is our AASHTO liaison. What is GoTug? It stands for Geospatial Online Transportation User Group. It was begun as an AASHTO innovation initiative by Utah DOT. This is now a part of the Committee on Data Management and Analytics. Kind of basically, it's to provide ongoing support and development of transportation capabilities with GIS-based online collaboration platforms. We've got about, let's see, 6 people on the steering committee. Again, my name is Caitlin. I'm with Utah DOT. I co-chair with Jeremy from North Carolina. We've got Eric Abrams from Iowa DOT. Andrew Wimsatt from Texas Transportation Institute, Nicole Hansen with Idaho DOT, and Mark Sarmiento. He'll be one of our presenters today with FHWA, and Penelope is the host. She is our AASHTO liaison, as we stated. Why GoTug? The group was kind of kicked off to maintain the momentum that was started with the UPlan AASHTO innovation initiatives, and the idea is to marry businesses with innovative web-based geospatial solutions. So we try to have these webinars periodically to help facilitate that. Here's some URLs for everybody. We've got the GoTug website, and then we've got a new distribution list. Since we switched to the self-enrollment method, the list has tripled. So we're really excited about that. We encourage everybody to please sign up yourself if you haven't already, and to please forward it to as many folks as you think may be interested. We really are trying to build up that base user list. So please forward that to everybody. It's really easy, just email and name. And then we also have an email there, gotug@transportation.org, and that's for suggesting webinar topics. We always want to get ideas, and we're looking for feedback. So please write that down and let us know if you have any ideas for future webinar topics. The idea with the data committee resources is to increase the visibility of GIS and geospatial issues and provide a technical resource group for AASHTO members. The next GoTug activities on the calendar coming up, we have another webinar on March 6th. That will be looking at open source GIS software. And then GIST is going to be in Florida this year from April 22nd through the 26th. So we hope to see you guys at the webinar and then at GIST as well. So our first presentation today is going to be by Mark Sarmiento. Mark is a GIS planning analyst at the Federal Highway Administration in Washington, D.C., with almost 25 years experience with GIS, working with geospatial data and enabling transportation agencies to become more effective through these technologies. For the last 10 years, he has concentrated on providing capacity building resources through case study reports, peer exchanges, webinars, and newsletters that highlight the noteworthy efforts of transportation agencies to apply GIS and use geospatial data. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Worcester Polytechnic Institute and a Master's of Engineering in Civil Engineering from the University of Virginia. So I will now hand it over to Mark. Please hold your questions to the end. We'll do a Q&A at that point. So take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Caitlin. Just to check, everyone can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. So today I just wanted to take this time to talk about some of the work that state DOTs are doing with capability maturity models. So I'll just quickly go over what a GIS CMM is, and then I'll cover essentially what state DOTs are doing with these. So what is a GIS CMM? Before we can get to that, let's explain what a CMM is. CMM stands for Capability Maturity Model. I define it as a tool to objectively assess the ability of an organization's processes to implement a project. It originally was focused on software projects, but its use is expanded in the business world to take a look at how organizations do things. Specifically, it's a good way to assess or measure an organization's object or technologies, their processes and structures, and then ultimately the people or the culture of the organization. Again, it's just a method to improve your organization's processes. So with a capability maturity model, what are the measures? Most of them have this sort of setup for measures for maturity levels. The first one on the left, initial, these are the processes are disorganized. A good way to just basically describe it is at the last bullet, reactive or ad hoc. When you have to deal with a project, you're pulling your resources together right then and there. When you get to the next level of maturity, you've kind of learned from that ad hoc process, and so you're able to repeat it. So you have basic management techniques. You can repeat the things you did to come up with the product, and you've got some process established. But what makes that different from the next level, where we talk about defined maturity levels, that you've actually documented these processes. So under repeatable, the things that you do could perhaps exist in someone's head, in someone's experience, but it's not necessarily written down. So that kind of sets apart the different, or highlights the difference between a defined maturity level and a repeatable maturity level. So as you go on up, you could see on the slide, after defined, if you one level up above defined is a managed maturity level, where your processes are documented, and now you're actually measuring how well you're doing things, how well you're performing. When you get to the most mature level, the optimized, you're taking those performance measures and you're using that to improve yourself. So as you go from left to right on the slide, you can go from an ad hoc process to an optimized process. You actually become more mature, and that's what the capability maturity models are measuring. So for a GIS capability maturity model, basically you're trying to answer the question, do you have an enterprise GIS? Because when you get to that optimized level, you're doing things that an enterprise GIS does within a GIS capability maturity model. And essentially the tool, a GIS capability maturity model, helps you measure yourself to see if you are you're at that point or where you are on that scale. For today, I will highlight two specific GIS CMMs. One of them is the ERISA GIS CMM. This is available as a PDF document on the ERISA website. The PDF document itself just has the questions that you can ask your agency when you do the self-assessment. They also offer a service. ERISA offers a service where they allow you to fill out the questions using a web browser. It's essentially a web form. They'll take the results and provide summary visualizations. They'll store all of the results that come out of the questions that you ask, and so that they have ERISA offers that service in addition to the tool itself. The other capability maturity model for GIS that we looked at is called SlimGMT. SlimGMT, it's essentially a downloadable spreadsheet, either in Excel, Microsoft Excel format, or available as a Google Sheet. And within that spreadsheet, it has the questions, it analyzes, it calculates the results, and puts together summary visualizations. So I'll just shortly go over these two. The first one is the ERISA GIS CMM. It's divided into two components. One of them is it's called enabling capability component, that has 23 questions. And all of those questions are focused on asking, do you have the resources? Do you have the organizational structure and infrastructure to do what you need to do? And the way the measures are below here. So you either the question doesn't apply to you at the bottom, or you mark off 0. We'd like to be at this level, but we're not. And it goes all the way up to a 1, where you're fully implemented. So that's the enabling capability part. The other component of the ERISA's model is the execution ability component that has 22 questions. And basically that's asking, are you able to maximize the use of your available capability? And that's assessed using the 5 maturity levels that I talked about earlier. So at level 1 is the ad hoc process, going up to level 5, which is the optimized process. So here's an example of the enabling capability section of the CMM. The question, so you should be able to see the question. That this one is asking about business GIS data. It's asking, does the agency have access to adequate business data to meet its business needs? On the right side, you would score yourself. There's in the third column, the ERISA GM-CM. That is just relating to the ERISA's geospatial management competency model. So these are just further questions to help you answer the main question. This screenshot is from the PDF document itself. There is also the execution ability component questions. This question, for example, is asking, how does the GIS unit monitor and evaluate client service delivery? And in this one, you try to rate yourself for either your level 1 or level 2, where level 2 being a repeatable process. And then again, level 5 is an optimized process. So this is just an example of what's in the ERISA GIS CMM. I mentioned earlier they have a service. And this is from their website. The service it's a comprehensive assessment of GIS management capability maturity. The assessment tool indicates your organization's GIS management maturity on a wide range of geospatial capabilities, and they're listed below. The key thing about this service is it is primarily for ERISA members, so you have to be a member of ERISA to use the tool. You don't have to be a member to download the PDF document that has all of the CMM questions. But if you want to know more information on the service or the maturity model itself from ERISA, this is the web link below. So when you go through the maturity model from ERISA, you get, I mentioned there's the questions, you have the results, and this is some of the summary visualizations that you get. This is I guess a spider graph. On the around the circumference of the graph, all around it, you have each of the questions that it asks, and where the blue line represents your score for each of those questions. And I guess the more circular, the more your plot looks like a circle, and in the larger circle that it can be, the higher your maturity level is for these questions in this area. So you can see how your scores are. You can also, with the service, kind of have you can compare yourself perhaps to other counties or look at, in this example, you're a county and you can compare yourself to all the other counties in your state. You could have a benchmark, a baseline. So you can see how if you're doing it year one, you could see what your plot looks like, and then year two, year three, following years, you can have those plotted, and you could see whether or not you've grown or matured, I guess, and be able to measure progress essentially. The other GIS capability maturity model that we looked at is called SlimJim-T. This is based on the SlimJim capability maturity model, which is a Creative Commons licensed piece of software by Paul Giroux. And this maturity model is broken into 5 components, and the number of questions are listed after the component title, but they're organizational structure and leadership, corporate culture, organizational capability, enterprise GIS sustainability, and foundational data and technologies. And within that model, you have you basically go. It's a spreadsheet that you can download. You can open it up in Excel or you can use Google Sheets. And within it, there's several questions that you answer. So on these questions are from the organizational structure and leadership component. You could see that question 1.2, GIS is authoritative. It's asking, or it's making the statement, spatial data has been recognized as a critical component of business systems and should work seamlessly between the business systems and the software. So here you would score your, score on a range from 1 to 5, what you think your agency rates at for maturity. And then there's another column called likelihood, and this is the likelihood of improvement. Whether or not do you think this area could be improved, and this could be within a certain time frame. So in this case, it could be if you decide you want to do these models in an annual basis, then what's the likelihood of improvement within the next year? That could be one way to view that. So as you go through all of the components of this model and answer the questions, at the bottom you'll see at the bottom of this slide you see that the scores are automatically updated with the totals. And then there's another tab within this spreadsheet workbook that pulls all the results together. So on the left side, you'll see that you have those 5 components for the SlimJim-T and what your scores are. So in this example, the agency started using this model in 2017, and that's below that on that column below 2017, you see what their scores were. They filled it again in 2018. You could see, or even they could see whether or not they've gone up. Then the middle column, I guess it's F. This again is the likelihood of change, and then on the right are factors for your maturity level. And I guess one thing I wanted to note too, for the likelihood of change, the spreadsheet, the tool can get analyze the results that you have in there and suggest that perhaps in this case, in this example, it appears that maturity will be difficult to achieve. Change management is recommended. So it takes the scores that you put down for likelihood of change for each of the components and recommends whether or not you might need some additional assistance. SlimJim-T also has a spider graph. This one is divided into the major components, and it also presents a bar graph also, just to help you visualize what your scores are. So I just briefly talked about what a GIS CMM is and the 2 types that we looked at. So when we wanted to look at what states were doing, it's kind of a result of some work that I've been involved with over the last couple of years. When at the bottom of the slide, you'll see business case for GIS case studies. In 2015, we saw that there's some interest in amongst the state DOTs on how did they justify getting the resources, getting the funding to do the GIS applications that they want to do. And so we decided let's find out what different states did. Did they do return on investment studies? Did they do benefit cost ratio analysis? Those types of things. And from that, we learned that perhaps there's something that can be done at the organizational agency level. So we did a peer exchange in 2016 that looked at different organizational assessment techniques. Out of that, we learned about ERISA's GIS capability maturity model. So from that peer exchange, we had some states basically pilot the ERISA GIS maturity model, and we put that together in a case study report in early 2017. And then we took those states. We actually did a workshop at the AASHTO GIST symposium, and from that we learned that in many cases the ERISA GIS capability maturity model was a little bit more complex. It was geared more towards local or municipal agencies, so some of the questions weren't as relevant to a state DOT. So at the GIS CMM peer exchange in 2017, we looked more. Iowa DOT suggested we look at the SlimJim model, and from that we decided let's see if we can get some states to try out a version of that SlimJim model called SlimJim T, where we actually customized the model so that it had some questions more relevant to a state DOT, and that was early in 2018. So from all of these activities, we got some, especially from the pilot states, from the specific GIS CMM pilots. We had some states volunteer to try out the two different maturity models, and what we did was we interviewed these states and captured their experiences, and we pulled those together in case study reports, and we try to highlight the motivations for wanting to do a capability maturity model, what were the benefits that they saw from doing it, what were some challenges, and what were some lessons learned. And so that's what I'm going to sum up in these last couple of slides. So what was the motivation? Why did the DOTs want to use the GIS capability maturity model? A lot of them were needed to formally identify their business process limitations. In many cases, agency or the GIS office, let's say, they had sort of a gut feeling that they needed more resources, but they didn't know how to express that to upper management. How do you justify why you need extra funding or you need extra people to help you do the work that you need to do? And this kind of makes a lot of sense when we took, especially when you take into account some of the work that some of these offices and agencies have done in trying to use things like benefit cost analyses and return on investment studies. Another reason why DOTs wanted to use or were interested in GIS CMMs is they wanted to use the model or leverage the model the results to prioritize and promote needed GIS projects. Another reason was they wanted to demonstrate the success of other GIS initiatives, and then being able to compare themselves with other similar agencies to kind of learn from them, or to again justify why they need certain resources. These were most of the reasons why states were interested in using a GIS CMM. As the pilot states went through and did them, they saw some benefits. They saw that these tools allowed GIS professionals to demonstrate changes in maturity that result from clearly defined and executed tasks. Certainly, if you fill out the first year, it's really the successive years where you can show changes and hopefully progress from that first year, and this tool helped them do that. It helped them identify strengths, weaknesses in their GIS applications and services at an agency, and it helped facilitate discussions that could lead to short-term and long-term items. Gave them basically something to talk about. Some of the challenges that the these agencies had to do with was just doing the assessment itself took time, or they didn't have enough staffing to do it. Um, a lot of, for the most part, most of the offices that would be doing these things have very very small staff, and to take time away from all the work that they have to do is a juggling act. And so these were some of the noted challenges. And some of the things that were learned from going through this is that capability maturity models and assessments, scaled assessments, were critical in developing GIS departments themselves. Uh, in order to start and complete the analysis effectively, you needed a strong understanding and buy-in from the people helping you do the capability maturity model. Some states thought that a test run could be helpful to get some context and get an idea of how this maturity model is supposed to work. Um, and then, identifying an efficient structure for GIS, IT, or even planning departments, which often house a GIS component. It's critical to understand how these organizations are structured. And then some agencies have learned that establishing efficient data management policies and processes in order to maintain continuity was important. So just I call this my observations. This is just coming from my perspective. This work is ongoing. I think let me just go back one slide here. When you look at this last bullet about establishing efficient data management policies and processes, I think I've seen a lot of that in the last year because there's a lot of interest in things like better data management and data governance, and a lot of agencies are realizing that we need to manage our data better and get buy-in from the executive level. So I think it seems that working on a maturity model is as valuable as the results that you get from yourself, because at the very least it helps start the conversation of how an agency can start doing things better. I think also I noticed that the way a state DOT goes about completing a CMM can certainly impact the results. This kind of goes back to making sure that they understand the maturity model and getting buy-in. Some states, when they went through this process, they had basically one person fill out or go through the model itself, answer the questions, and they sort of represented the whole agency. Another state got a group of people that represented different offices within the DOT, and then they all worked together to put them all to answer the questions. And another state basically sent the model out to those people, to specific people within the departments within DOT. They filled them out separately, and then they came together to compare the results and try to, come to a consensus on it. So there's different ways, it seems, that in going through the model. And right now, since we're essentially still early in this process, we're still trying to learn how to go about this in the best way. But once you go through a maturity model, it seems that being able to share and compare results can have big benefits. A lot of states are interested in learning what their peers are doing. And so, helping peers learn from each other seems to be a very big benefit from this, either learning strategies or justifying why they might need resources. The other thing, too, is, from Federal Highway, what we're interested in is getting a national perspective on these efforts to see where we can help facilitate that, because in the end, a lot of these applications or even the data, Federal Highways is often a customer of that, and we use that in the work that we do. So definitely there's a need for learning about successful strategies for doing a GIS CMM. But I think in the end, if you get your processes in place, if your people are all on board, if you've got an enterprise GIS, then you can really do really good GIS applications, and I think that's the goal in the end. So I just kind of went through what a GIS CMM is, and what states are doing with them. And if you want more detailed information, those are available. I mentioned a couple of reports. These are the links. I think we can share. We can definitely share this presentation so that you can have access to these resources. My email address is at the bottom. And just one more thing, I'm going to pull a special interest group together at the next GIST symposium, which will be this April in Kissimmee, Florida. So if you're interested in learning more about it, look for more information on the special interest group. So with that, that wraps up my part of the presentation. I guess I can take questions if anyone has any.
Okay, Mark, it looks like we've got one here. What does CMM have to do with geospatial online applications?
That's a good question. I think in the end, when you're pulling these, I guess, geospatial online applications, but really GIS-based applications in general, certainly first time you do it, you do it, but then you realize most of the time that there could be an easier way to do it. And part of that easier way is understanding how you're getting data, how you're getting the software to create the tool, the IT infrastructure that's in place. Could it happen more efficiently? And a lot of it, in the end, really has to do with the people and the culture, I guess, of the organization. And to measure that, that's how maturity models can help. It's to make to take that gut feeling that you might have that something could be better or something's not right, and to put it in a little bit more of a objective way to show that if we had resources, we'd be able to make this data available much faster, more efficiently, make this application more responsive. I think one of the great examples is when there is I think North Carolina, for example, when they went through Hurricane Florence, that was a great opportunity to take advantage of geospatial online applications and data that's available as web services. I know that in USDOT we were able to pull in a lot of North Carolina's data pretty quickly and pull it into our applications and make that available to our executive leadership. Back in the old days, we probably would have had to call someone to see if they could send us a shapefile to do that. And so if you've got processes in place, or if you're set up more efficiently, then you can definitely save a lot of time. And maturity models will help you measure, help you express your needs to get the resources that you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Any follow-up questions for Mark?
Okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity. I'll switch things over to Brett Jewell. Let's see.
Okay. And just a note here as well for everybody, the presentations themselves will also be posted with the webinar recording. So you will have access to these PowerPoints that our presenters are showing today.
All right. Well, thank you. And
okay. Brett, I'll introduce you quick here. We've got a bio here for you. So Brett has been the manager of Oregon DOT's Geographic Information Services Unit since 2010. Prior to this, he spent nearly 21 years with the Oregon Department of Revenue's Cadastral Information Systems Unit. He has managed cartographers, geographers, and GIS professionals delivering GIS support to both state agencies since 2004. He earned a bachelor's degree in geography at Oregon State University and is a lifelong Oregon resident. We've also got a second presenter, Phil Smith, is the Environmental GIS Program Manager at Oregon Department of Transportation. He has served the agency since 2001, providing its GIS program with technical leadership with an emphasis on environmental GIS support for transportation. Phil's previous GIS work experience includes Coos Bay Watershed Association, Oregon, Bureau of Land Management in Idaho, North Cascades National Park in Washington, and the University of Idaho. Early in his career, he worked for the U.S. Forest Service on forest stand inventories and wildland firefighting, and also in the private sector as a land survey technician. He served 4 years in the Navy aboard the USS Enterprise as an orographer's mate, providing shipboard weather and oceanographic support. Phil holds an MS in geography from the University of Idaho and a BS in environmental studies with a minor in physical geography from the State University of New York at Buffalo. And then we will also, at the end of this, have a slide with all of these presenters' contact information as well. So I'll hand it over to Brett and Phil, and we will also have a Q&A session at the completion of their presentation.
Thank you very much. Now you know why Phil was hired here. He's a great guy. Yeah. So again, this is Brett Jewell, GIS Unit Manager here at Oregon DOT. And we just wanted to show some quick pictures from around Oregon. This actually comes from ODOT staff who travel around the state. So we're pretty proud of those pictures. So this is why we decided to use the CMM was, first of all, just to gain familiarity with the Slim Jim CMM and participate with the peer states and identify GIS business areas to improve. Much of the same things that Mark cited in the earlier efforts, whether they were the ERISA CMM or the Slim Jim T CMM. Oops, I'm on a different mouse. Sorry about that. It's got a quick trigger. And then, of course, to get that initial self-assessment, first time through with the Slim Jim T, to establish a baseline, and also challenges we have in common with other DOTs. Maybe if we're all experiencing the same problems, we can work together to come up with some solutions. And so, of course, the first one we used, like Mark cited, was ERISA CMM. It was just after the peer exchange that we'd had in September of 2016. And in this case, it was myself and 3 of my unit team leads. We each completed it separately. We had an initial meeting to talk about, what each of the items meant. At least we would have some consensus on that. And then when we each went off on our own and completed the CMM. And then I compiled all the results to show the spider diagram from each person along with an average. And then we had a group debrief to talk about where we might have had variances and so forth. So with the Slim Jim T, what we learned from that is like, well, this time let's try it as a group exercise. So again, it was me and 3 of the unit team leads. What we found with these discussions were valuable. So we could kind of sort through some of the, I wouldn't call them disagreements, but maybe some misperceptions by each person. That was very valuable. We had set it up, we started as an hour meeting. I think we went on for over 2 hours before we got through the whole CMM. Of course, with the Slim Jim T, we answered the likelihood portion of it as well. What we also found is, well, this was great. We're getting better at using the CMMs, but we're going to need broader input. And so whether that's our major stakeholders, maybe members from our GIS steering committee, perhaps others in the unit.
Potentially even other state partner agencies.
So this is what our first spider diagram looks like. So we downloaded the Slim Jim T version that had the 6 major areas. And it's a nice visual. It really shows us, where we might want to focus some future efforts. And some of these we already knew about. Others, it kind of confirmed what we were already feeling, but it was good to get that down into the spreadsheet and then also showing on the diagram. And so what I'm going to do is kind of highlight some of the components of each of the major areas in the next slides. So like the first one here, and you'll see it matches on the left here with the maturity by category, is GIS is authoritative. We are currently working with another group, and they are doing a strategic data business plan for the agency. And so we rated the maturity as lower, since we want to have that confirmed and find out just which of the data layers that our systems would be considered authoritative. We're just the geospatial portion of all the data that's available in the agency. Likelihood of that, of course, is a 4. High likelihood that we're going to be able to establish that. GIS resource allocation, we rated that as very high. We've got good high buy-in as far as the number of staff we've got, and we've got the 12 GIS professionals and 2 GIS application developers from another division. And so that's what we've been working with for a number of years now. And it seems to cover a lot of the primary projects that we need to work on. So as far as the likelihood for change, plus budgeting, everything else, that's a low likelihood. The GIS vision, comprehensive use and innovation, we went with the maturity level of a 2. Management is committed to enterprise GIS, but we need to do a strategic business plan, and that's part of what we're doing this for too, to kind of tie in with that. And Phil was going to mention some things about that.
Well, not too much further on that, but just that we recognize there's definitely more room for progress and recognition in terms of growth in that area. There's a strategic data plan initiative that's already underway, and we recognize that's why we're scoring the likelihood for change pretty high in that area. So we'll be kind of capitalizing upon that and really trying to figure out where does GIS's sense of authoritative data fit in with the rest of the needs of the agency.
Right, and that agency strategic business plan was completed just a number of months ago. We wanted that to get completed first, so we would have basically a target, something to shoot for, so we can align our vision and mission and goals and so forth. And then the next one, the corporate culture, is right over number 2, so we got the bar graph there. The environment of the organization fosters innovation. We rated that a little lower because we have high dependence on IT server managers and our security section, as well as a state data center, we call it. So we've got to go through a lot of other people, and that at times will stifle innovation. We're not able to just freely execute all the new applications in our own infrastructure.
Right, and I agree. And I found this category to be more of a mixed bag for us. The staff recognize the usefulness of GIS and the data products, and they think of it as essential to their workflows. But kind of as an agency organization and our culture, sometimes that limits how we can deploy our products and services. And that it just takes many partnerships, and those partnerships take time to develop. And so we kind of recognize that as kind of an ongoing effort.
Yeah, so the next item was the staff accept enterprise GIS as a reliable data source. Now, it might seem to contradict the earlier point where we said, only a 2 maturity on GIS as authoritative, but it is a reliable source of spatial data for the organization. That is where the people go. We have upwards of 400 GIS users throughout the agency. We figure about 30 are super users. The rest, they may just get into the GIS software and application once or twice a year. But we've got the data out there on our flagship web application. We have over 130 data layers that are continually updated. And then the next one, core competency, improved with training plans. This is also something that will be taken care of once we get the results of a strategic business plan, as we prioritize what is it we really should be working on for the agency, what's the highest and best use of our resources that are unlikely to go up. And so with that, we can do assessments of the staff, where they are with technical competencies, and then start coming up with more detailed training plans. Next one, enterprise GIS related communication is frequent and guided by plans. There is some of that going on. We've had training sessions out in our 5 regions and then our technical center, one region even twice. That's part of it. We do have a GIS user group. That's where we've got over 400 people throughout the agency, throughout the state, that we will send communications to, but we can do more. And we also work with our communications section to make announcements of updates to our GIS web applications or other things that the unit is working on. And there is a good likelihood that that is going to improve over time. There is a good amount of will among the upper management to promote that. So the next section 3, process orientation. This is among our lowest here. So as far as staff are process minded, the staff here started out, we'll go back 20 years. This is pretty much a CAD shop, MicroStation, updating city county maps, creating the inventory for the highways and the functional class roads. And we started moving into GIS, getting into GIS software, and
Early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s, and basically developing these new processes. Now we've got institutional knowledge in the unit, but our focus now is to document those processes once we're finally down to a procedures that we want to stick with that are working for us.
Right. Brett and I have both been here in this organization at a time where it's gone from really a niche function to kind of a broader service role.
Mm-hmm. And the next item, plan to improve and align process to strategic plan. Gave it a 1, but of course that is another reason that we want to get our strategic business plan updated and figure out what our priorities are. Then we can begin to emphasize certain areas. The data maintenance embedded in business workflow, this is one area where we feel we are at a high maturity. We've been doing this for years. I mentioned the over 130 data layers for our TransGIS web application. Most of those are annual updates. We get them from all over the agency, several different business lines, up to 40 that we work with. They are the authoritative source for the data, but some of the things that we do is we work with those different business lines. We identify an owner. They identify the technical lead for the review on the data, as well as updating metadata. So we work with them on that as well.
So I think one of my key areas, and some are for us, or for me anyway, the process orientation. One of the things we really recognize is our GIS strategic plan is very dated. It actually predates most of our current staff and our leadership. But right now we're starting a new initiative for a new GIS strategic business plan, and that's getting underway now. At the same time, it kind of also opens up this conversation to other state DOTs that we're kind of beginning that initiative ourselves. And if any of the other agencies that are listening have recently completed a GIS strategic plan initiative and be willing to share that information or experience with us, that'd be helpful to where we're going. We recognize that as a place that we're really trying to grow today.
Very good point. Thanks, Phil. And the next major area we'll go to is the organizational capacity capability. So the enterprise GIS led by appropriate sufficient staff. Again, we gave that a high maturity level. We have gotten a great group of staff that come in highly motivated, highly trained, highly experienced from around the state. Recent recruitments, one we've had 64 qualified applicants and another 52 qualified applicants. So we feel that as an agency, we've been very fortunate to be able to get the staff in there. The likelihood for improvements gave it a mid maturity or mid likelihood. And then the staff we have now are very cognizant of our enterprise GIS architecture, business processes. Relationship building was a big one. Customer service, since we're working with so many people across the agency, we emphasize that, and staff has responded very well. One of the areas we're emerging in is more of the project management side of things. We got some of our more senior staff that is more experienced in that, but we want to improve that to use project management techniques and strategies. And then the next item, GIS data interoperability exists. We gave ourselves a high mark on that, or higher. And we work mostly though with, say, MicroStation CAD data, work with the design engineers. And we also have a partner unit. They have their data in a Oracle-based database, but we are able to transfer that data quite seamlessly, output and so forth, and some of the software solutions that we have tie in very nicely with that. And then there's corporate-wide spatial competency. And this is an agency, they are very in tune with different GIS, geospatial data, and how it could be used to help them do their jobs better. And so that's been a real nice thing. We don't have to start from square one. Engineers, planners, and so forth, even the people that work out in the field have good awareness of that.
Yeah, I feel that as, I think I've heard both Mark and kind of Brett express that the CMMs, for me, they've not so much revealed like great surprises to our organization as much as they provided a helpful tool to help us discuss our state, where we're at, and where we'd like to go next. So in this area, the organizational capacity and capability, it was really refreshing to see these numbers. Here's an area we're really feeling pretty good about where we're at and where we like to grow.
All right. So the next one, enterprise GIS sustainability. So blending of IT analysis, visualization, and GIS. And are you guys seeing those notifications? I apologize if you're seeing those. They haven't been coming up until today.
We're remoted in on an InFocus board, so I think InFocus needs an update.
Yeah, sorry about that. So the blending of IT analysis, visualization, and GIS, active partnership, blending GIS, IT tech staff. We work closely with our asset or application development group, but we still went with a maturity level of 2. And we're also working with our planners. So as far as the analysis, they do some pretty high-level analysis work, but not always using the GIS software. They have special packages. That's an area where we want to grow to be able to provide analysis services and so forth.
Yeah, we've recognized this as an issue for us for a long time in terms of our compartmentalization away from IT and even from some of our direct planning disciplines kind of leaves us a bit off to the side at times, and so we score ourselves a bit lower. We recognize it as a place to improve process, and it's part of our ongoing refinement, ongoing discussion.
Okay, so long-term competency and training plans. Again, this would be another thing that we could glean from an updated strategic business plan, and once we identify what our priority work areas are, so we went a little lower on the maturity level there. So that's an area to work on. And the last one, data and application backup. So we went pretty high on that. So even though we have to work with our data or server administrators and security, they do have processes in place, stringent processes to do regular updates, backups, and security for GIS data, much like the notifications that are coming up on my computer here. And so they're reliable, controlled, consistent, and on the rare in the rare instance where we do have to get some data that's been backed up, it's just a matter of minutes that we can retrieve previous data if a data set gets destroyed or something like that.
Right. It's an interesting timing for us to think about enterprise GIS sustainability, because as right now we're kind of approaching conversations about how we might eventually migrate towards ArcGIS Pro and some of the other tools, and they kind of get deployed differently. And so it's kind of a good timing for us to think about how we are going to go about doing our technology distribution, sustaining those kind of products, and our ongoing training. So we'll kind of have some middle score numbers there, and it's also kind of a point of pivotal change too.
Okay, the last section, the foundational data and technologies. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, business unit data owners and data stewards are defined, and that's one of the requirements for getting a new data layer put on our TransGIS web application. And as I also mentioned, that involved the updating the metadata. And if there appears to be any sort of duplication of effort with other business lines, we help facilitate those communications between the different business lines to make sure that the right person is the data steward and data owner. Production and published database of reliable data. So again, that's using all our processes we currently have in place, and we are able to publish those through our various web applications. And also in the desktop software, we have what we call ODOT Toolbar, and that makes all the data available. It's even more, probably 200 or more layers. Aerial imagery is in there as well, various raster data. And so this is something that's in place to basically help the GIS users throughout the agency to be able to do things themselves. And we also provide support on that. And the system architecture is current. Yep, we had a new infrastructure upgrade here a few months ago, and we are on the Esri ArcGIS, the desktop software is at version 5, and then we're almost done with upgrading our server infrastructure to version 6.1. So we're trying to keep up with that. As everybody uses Esri software knows, they're always moving forward. So, but we do have a infrastructure that's internal. It's a dev, test, prod, 3-tier system, as well as a DMZ presence, which is a 2-tier system, test, and production. And it's very adaptable to additions, changes. We've got a hardened SQL server as well. The next one, the metadata, we felt pretty good about that. Another 4, as I mentioned earlier, we do work with business lines to get that updated frequently and keep it up to date. Technical infrastructure is, it's been optimized here in the last couple of years. And so that has been working very well, very stable, and that's helping reduce the help desk calls that come our way as far as GIS software not working or processes not working. And then, of course, the foundational data, adequate foundational secondary data exists to meet business requirements. That has been ongoing for 20 years, and we're always looking for new sets of data to help mature, make consistent throughout the state, not just one region. So it's available for everyone to use.
Yeah, if I would recap our foundational data and technologies, I'd say that our whole GIS leadership team was pretty universal in feeling like we have a pretty solid enterprise structures in place that kind of give us pretty high confidence around data stewardship, the backups, backup efficiency, and stable architecture. We recognize that at times that kind of it limits our flexibility and kind of our speed of operation at times. But that compromise has been really worth it, for it gives us a strong foundation and some real enterprise resiliency.
All right. So next steps for the CMM. As we kind of alluded to earlier, have a broader group rate us using the Slim Jim CMM and use as a part of our initial discovery for a GIS strategic business plan update. So as once we get a contractor on board to help us with the strategic business plan, we'll walk through the CMM that we've worked through, and hopefully they can glean some information, provide some insights for us as a path forward as far as our plan update. And we want to use it to help better align our efforts with the newly released Oregon DOT Strategic Business Plan, as I mentioned earlier. If we're not aligned with the agency's plan, we may have problems. So this will help us communicate our needs, say for training, travel to conferences and so forth, if we can cite that with our strategic business plan and make a clear connection with the agency plan. And recommendations for using the CMM. Well, establish a core group that will be available to retake the CMM. So we've got that. It's myself and our 3 team leads, but we want to broaden that and find some others. So that way we can show those changes over time, much as Mark illustrated in his presentation. Are we actually maturing? Are our efforts giving us progress? Are there benefits from that? And then need to determine if it's taken on a 1 or 2 year cycle. Mark's presentation showed it on a 1 year, so we'll be looking into that. Once we get into a rhythm and in a way, it shouldn't be too difficult to do it on a 1 year.
Right. We've had a couple of looks at it and feel like we have a pretty solid base to take a look at, but it's really those trends over time that will be most meaningful to us, kind of giving us an ongoing metric of improvement and progress.
And then have the core group review the results of the CMM in order to translate the strategic needs into specific achievable actions. So again, this is where the discussion part comes in among the folks that will be going through the CMM. Then we can develop a GIS health improvement plan. So with that was the end of the presentation. Any questions? What a nice group.
I guess they're letting you guys off easy today.
I don't know, there are some questions in the question bar.
Okay.
Do you have a statewide strategic data plan as well and a statewide chief data officer?
We do have what we call our state GIS coordinator. That's Cy Smith. He's with the office of the state CIO. And that is also a group that Phil's been involved in as the GIS project lead chair over the last 2 years. So he's in the process of handing it off to another. These are the different agencies where we establish framework data layers for the state. So of course we are the stewards for the statewide road centerline network. My previous position with Oregon Department of Revenue, which I was at for almost 21 years, they are the stewards of the cadastral or the tax lot base for the state. And there are like 14 primary framework layers, but all those that fall within those categories is over 250 data layers. Yeah, very extensive there. And we have our, what we call the FIT forums, Framework Implementation Team forums, a couple times a year to keep our efforts going forward in an aligned manner. And then our division administrator here, she is actually one of the Oregon Geographic Information Council members, and that's a legislatively mandated group now. And so she participates on that with our state CIO, Cy Smith. He chairs that. And it's even got a couple of the legislators, one from the Senate, one from the House, who participate in that group as well.
Yeah, that level of leadership is really changing for us, and so we're looking forward to seeing where that goes. That council is broadening out. Used to really be pretty heavily focused on state agencies. Now, not always including legislative body, but also members from local gov and intergovernment level participation. So hopefully there's some new direction for how we tie into a lot of our partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's like Phil said, that's local, state, federal, tribal, as well as the legislative group. And then as far as the statewide data plan, the effort that's going on with ODOT is staying in line or in contact with Cy Smith as far as their statewide geospatial data plan. And that will also be maturing over time as this new Geographic Information Council goes through and matures.
Right. How they have put data sharing into legislation is going to impact how we partner with other agencies within Oregon.
Any other questions?
Yes. What software solutions are you using to enable data access and or ETL into the geospatial environment?
For the most, day in, day out, for the most part, it's going to be along the Esri ArcGIS products. But for ETLs, we're really relying heavily on FME workflows, FME workbenches.
Yeah, feature manipulation engine.
Okay. And you mentioned your annual snapshots, but this question is that they are curious how you're handling temporal data. How about data that for business purposes requires more frequent updating than annually?
We've got some of those where, like the road network, we've started doing a mid-year update on that as far as where, say, a new section of highway opens, realignments, roundabouts. They've gained popularity on the highway system here in Oregon. Some of the others we're looking towards utilizing consuming services, data services, trying to get the data out there. If it's updating on a weekly basis, we've got some of those groups where we're working with on that. We do one update daily that's for the access points and permitting along the state highway system.
Yeah, I think most of our core data areas, we're feeling pretty good about how we're going to manage our update cycles. But do all of our users recognize our update cycles and what is the best source of data? That's kind of where we're really trying to grow that relationship out with our GIS user community better, so that they are better dialed into that update cycle.
Yeah, one other example is we've got this new TAP program. It's for the project tracking, for STIP project tracking, and that's for transparency, accountability, and performance. And so we're working with the data warehouse now, because that actual web application requires financial information as well. So it goes beyond just updating the geospatial information, which is reviewed and updated throughout the year. Anything else?
Okay, I think that's it for questions. Just a couple of reminders, both the audio recording of this webinar as well as the PowerPoint presentations will be made available online. You can visit GOTUG's website for that. The next webinar that we have scheduled will be on March 6th, and that will cover open source GIS solutions. And again, GIST is April 22nd to the 26th in Florida. And please let us know if you have any suggestions for topics for future webinars, as well as if you've got a particular thing that you would like to present on. We're always looking for volunteers for that. So thanks, everybody. And and we'd like the presenters to send PowerPoints to Penelope as well. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.